Well, hello, everybody. I'm Amber Canto, and I work at the University of Wisconsin-Madison Division of Extension. I'm a member of ASNA's Race, Health, and Social Equity Committee, and a member of the writing team for the committee's position paper on race, health, and social equity in SNAP-Ed. Next slide. In today's presentation, I will briefly review the committee's working definition of equity, the guiding principles of equity, and outline a framework for action to embed equity in SNAP-Ed. Next slide. Equity means fairness and justice for everyone in both process and impact, regardless of racial, cultural, economic, or any other identity. Whereas equality provides one-size-fits-all solutions, equity recognizes that we do not all start from the same place and must therefore make acknowledgments and adjustments to systemic imbalances and differential redistributions of support according to individual needs. We conceptualize equity in two ways: a process for how we approach our efforts within institutions to ensure our programming is inclusive, accessible, and representative of those most impacted by poor health and nutrition outcomes, such that we are more likely to achieve fair and just outcomes and impact. Next slide. Holding this definition of equity central, the Race, Health, and Social Equity Committee developed guiding principles as values to frame and shape our efforts within local contexts and to inform the way we challenge existing practices, protocols, and ideas. The guiding principles include authentic community engagement, starting with strengths, impact over intent, integrity, transparency, and accountability, cross-sector partnerships, and centering people. These principles were defined in greater depth at the ASNA in-person meeting, and we've also developed a one-paper that we are happy to share. Next slide. This slide depicts our current graphic of the Race, Health, and Social Equity Conceptual Action Framework. And I acknowledge that it's a bit unwieldy here on the screen today, but I'm going to break it down in the slides that follow. I just want to first highlight the interrelationship between the key domains that support institutional actions that embed equity as a process. The action framework is based on the premise that we all have a role to play in advancing equity. In particular, the framework acknowledges the positionality of SNAP-Ed agencies as change agents. Next slide. The first domain is that race, health, and social equity are shared values. Holding equity as a shared value means that all SNAP-Ed staff understand social and economic inequalities that shape health disparities, and that all agencies share power with communities that are most impacted by health inequities. Next slide. Cross-sector partnerships are a cornerstone to advancing equity in our institutions. They can extend the number of resources available to address complex problems and increase the likelihood of community and social change. Next slide, please. Another domain in the action framework is the SNAP-Ed agency organizational environment. The SNAP-Ed agency organizational environment influences the overall climate and support for addressing equity through operational and programmatic practices. Senior leaders play a key role in defining a commitment to advancing equity and accepting accountability for advancing equity through workforce development, staff development, and resource allocation. Next slide. A fourth domain in the framework reflects centering equity in SNAP-Ed program development and evaluation. Equitable program development and implementation centers the voices of those most impacted by inequities through participatory program processes, prioritizes program strategies that are more likely to lead to equitable outcomes, such as a focus on policy systems and environmental changes, and are culturally and linguistically appropriate. Next slide. The final domain refers to centering equity in SNAP-Ed program evaluation. Again, in this domain, we acknowledge the importance of incorporating participatory processes into program evaluation. We encourage and start with community assets and strengths. We acknowledge that data should be disaggregated and contextualized to reflect systemic inequities. and data ownership is shared with communities most impacted by health inequities. Next slide, please. While our time today was brief, I hope you are all intrigued to review the Race, Health, and Social Equity Committee's position paper and action framework in greater detail once published. We hope the paper will be published soon. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Amber, and hello again. On behalf of the Arizona SNAP-Ed program, also known as AZ Health Zone, Christina Konecki, Kay Orzek, and I will be sharing a few highlights from some of the program's first steps in centering equity through community engagement. And at the end of this talk, I will drop the link in the chat to the full report on some of these efforts. First, I will turn things over to Christina, our state SNAP-Ed administrator, to share the vision for community engagement at state and local levels of the program. Next slide.
Good morning, and thank you for having us today. I'm going to provide a brief overview of our program here in Arizona. The AZ Health Zone program is in all 15 counties. 13 of our 15 counties have predominantly rural communities. This map on your screen here depicts the location of our local health departments and the University of Arizona Cooperative Extension offices that implement our program throughout the state. We consider our AZ Health Zone SNAP-Ed program to be a community health engagement program that supports and builds collaborative partnerships to recognize the whole person and support improvement of health with our residents. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, our program works to build collaborative partnerships with community organizations and residents to work towards building resilient communities. We look to achieve this through our foundational principles based on the program's guiding framework seen here. Our foundation builds on the health equity lens with the adoption of trauma-aware principles at each level of the program to ensure that interventions are meeting individuals and families where they are and avoiding harm. This is then enhanced with engagement in communities with limited resources for greater integration of programming and sustainability that meets their needs, strengths, and desires. Next slide. The AZ Health Zone has 3 focus areas. Active living, which focuses on PSE changes that encourage individuals to integrate physical movement into everyday routine. Childhood, which supports early care and education and school and youth-based systems, and food systems which interacts with the parts, processes, and people involved in the food system to improve food security. Our program strives to be intentional and consider the unique needs, strengths, and readiness of partners in participating communities. Our vision is to work alongside community to plan, create, and implement programming that is meaningful and sustainable. With that, I'll turn it back over to Laurel. Next slide.
Thanks, Christina. I'm going to share with you some community engagement evaluation findings from our local agencies, mentioning first AZ Health Zone's definition of community engagement. Click, please. This definition integrates SNAP-Ed residents' voices into SNAP-Ed programming using the Spectrum of Public Participation model, and I'll drop the link to that model in the chat in a few moments. To a large degree, our local agencies described, together with community members, figuring this new type of work out as they went, or making the road by walking. Next slide. Local agencies, or LIAs, that made substantial progress implementing community engagement activities last year describe their work in ways that align with the Spectrum of Public Participation model. Click, please. Last fall, 11 staff from 7 local programs in 6 of our 15 Arizona counties gathered with me to discuss their progress. A plurality of community engagement activities that they described aligned with the consult level of this model. 4 clicks, please. Consult refers to purposefully seeking residents' feedback on the program or a community topic related to SNAP-Ed. In this example on the screen, the local agency set up booths that facilitated questions at a school wellness night. Involve refers to integrating residents' interests into program decision-making. In this gardening example, a community garden incorporated residents' feedback into the plants that were made available, thanks to the SNAP-Ed local agency's community engagement efforts. Collaborate refers to partnering with residents on each aspect of decision-making. In this case, the local agency collaborated with residents from start to finish to co-facilitate a community training. Next slide. Our local agency staff described key steps for successful community engagement. 5 clicks, please. They made a sustained commitment to engaging communities, meaning years rather than a one-off event or short-term project. They have devoted substantial time and maintained a consistent community presence in order to build rapport with residents and learn about each community's needs, history, and context. This takes a lot of staff time, and it isn't always reportable in systems like PAIRS or NPAIRS. And finally, culminating from the first three, our local agency staff have sought to build trusted community engagement partnerships, both directly with residents and also with community gatekeepers, such as representatives of affinity organizations. Click, please. LIAs, or our local agencies, also noted the importance of cultivating residents as engagement leaders themselves and acknowledged that rural engagement, when effective, looks very different. I'll turn things over to Kay now. Next slide, please.
Thinking about the spectrum of public participation that Laurel introduced, I'll use Arizona Active Living activities to illustrate how SNAP-Ed staff have consulted with community members around PSC work related to the built environment. Consultation methods have included next click, chatting with individual community members, next click, collecting feedback during community meetings, next click, and collecting visual data. Next click. One local agency used the photo voice methodology to capture residents' challenges in the built environment, like where the sidewalk ends on the way to Walmart. Next slide, please. One way our local implementing agencies in Arizona have involved community members in increasing PA resource access and use is by, next click, doing community engaged assessments of physical activity resource condition. Next click. Key steps in involving community members include local staff choosing a resource to assess and then connecting with community members, although this invitation is typically not the first contact with community, and sometimes the community members are the ones to suggest which resources to assess. Next click. Assessments with community members often require interpretation and translation of materials in many parts of Arizona, especially into Spanish, in addition to preparation of English materials. Next click. When assessing a local resource like a park, community members may have a different experience of it than the SNAP-Ed staff person. So it's important to center community concerns and also plan follow-up action to validate participants' concerns and honor the time they spent to assess the resource. Back to you, Laurel. Next slide.
Thanks, Kay. We're looking forward to another year of community engagement growth in the AZ Health Zone program, and we welcome more conversation with anyone attending today about how this kind of work is going in our state or in yours. Thank you.
Hello, thank you so much for joining us and here today to learn about common threads and how we've reworked our food philosophy to honor the communities and cultures we serve. Next slide. I'm Dawn Susie, Associate Director of Programs, and I'm joined by my colleague, Michelle Trong, our Education and Training Manager. Today, we will be sharing our new food philosophy. But first, here's a quick intro into Common Threads. Next slide. Common Threads is a national nonprofit organization that provides cooking and nutrition education to children and families. We equipped under-resourced communities with information to make affordable and nutritious food choices wherever they live, work, learn, and play. We know that food is rooted in culture and tradition. Our lessons and recipes promote diversity, encouraging participants to embrace the world around them. Next slide. We operate in these 6 major states and have national programming through our online website and virtual training platforms. Next, I will pass it to Michelle, who will discuss some changes the food philosophy has undergone. Next slide.
Thanks, John. So what's a food philosophy? In the past, we've used USDA Dietary Guidelines, or DGAs, as nutrition standards to guide us as we promote healthy behaviors and nutritional habits. However, we saw that as the world evolved, we wanted to as well. We wondered, what would it look like if we added tangible practices around cultural competency, cultural relevancy, local procurement, and sourcing? Our food philosophy guides our organization to promote healthy behaviors, cultivate relationships over a meal, and just celebrate food culture and origins. So before we jump into our current food philosophy, let's look at our previous one. Next slide, please. Established in 2003, our former food philosophy was driven by DGAs like the use of unprocessed ingredients, whole grains, and unrefined sugars. A lot of time and effort went into updating it. A dedicated team of staff members reworked our food philosophy over the course of a year, and in May of 2022, our new food philosophy was approved and has since been at the center of all of our programs. Next slide, please. Our present food philosophy is currently divided into 3 pillars. So rather than the focus be solely on dietary guidelines, it emphasizes a celebration of culture, health promotion via nutrient-dense recipes, and finally prioritizes local food procurement when possible. On the next slide, we'll find our first pillar, which is celebrating culture. At the forefront of our mission here at Common Threads, we want to acknowledge that traditional foods are a part of a healthy diet and recognize participants' options to choose the foods that best reflect their cultural identity. Next slide, please. So accompanying each pillar are practice standards. So these standards ensure that we have practical, tangible, hands-on ways for participants to access our menus and celebrate culture while sharing nutritional knowledge at the same time. So for our first pillar shown here, some practice standards are that the recipes will include an ingredient spotlight, a story or anecdote from the chef who created the menu, and a printable recipe card available for families. Next slide, please. Our second pillar is all about promoting health. So we want to make sure that our recipes are not just tasty and celebrate culture, but also that they're healthy and likely to be prepared by our participants. Next slide, please. We've outlined our commitment to having at least 1 to 2 recipe modifications. These might include vegetarian, dairy-free, nut-free alternatives, and more. All of our recipes will be aligned to the DGA. And finally, we want to ensure that 75% of our recipes can be prepared with 10 or less ingredients and cost less than $3 to $5 per serving. Next slide, please. Our final pillar promotes local foods and economies. We want to use local produce whenever possible and cultivate partnerships with local food vendors in our various markets. And we have a great goal of adopting the Good Food Purchasing Pledge by year 2025. Next slide, please. And to reach these local food procurement goals, all of our recipes have a plant-based substitute. And we're also committed to including 1 to 2 ingredients that can be grown in one of Common Threads counties. Next slide, please. So to ensure that we practice all of the goals that you just learned about, we formed a recipe council. So the recipe council consists of several members who give us valuable insight and feedback on recipes before they've been added to our curriculum. Next slide, please. So here's an overview of our recipe council members and their respective roles. So currently we have a chef instructor, an educator, a registered dietitian, program manager, and professional chef. Each of these roles is crucial in making sure that our menus are both nutrient dense and culturally relevant. Next slide, please. With any new rollout, our food philosophy has come with its successes and challenges. While we've begun implementing the changes to the food philosophy internally and externally, we continue to struggle with the lack of funding and staff capacity to follow through on some of those promises that we made in our practice standards, and just in general, maintaining fidelity to the food philosophy. Next slide, please. In light of this, this is what we continue to do. We're continuing to use the food philosophy to inform the decisions made in our curriculum and programs, monitor effective implementation of the food philosophy practice standards. We can currently translate our recipes into Spanish, but we're hoping to add many more languages. And finally, we're starting to build time and resources into our grant budget to cover a stipend for the Recipe Council, as well as put money towards food photography. So just process shots to help those that might not be able to read. Next slide, please. And finally, here's our call to action. We welcome any feedback on our food philosophy. This is definitely a work in progress. Please, you're welcome to adopt any parts of our food philosophy if you're looking to incorporate cultural standards in your own organizations. We'd also just love to collaborate. We feel like there's so much we can learn from our peers. So hopefully we hear from you. Finally, I'm going to pass it back to Dawn, who's going to share more about some of Common Threads as resources. Next slide, please.
Thanks. Next slide. Thank you, Michelle. Our programs will fall into two main categories: nutrition education and chef-led programs. Students in grades pre-K to 8 are taught about nutrition and healthy cooking in our Small Bites program, which is available as an after-school, in-school, or summer program. As part of each lesson, kids make a healthy, heat and knife-free snack. Next slide. Our Small Bites program can also be adapted to be implemented virtually through live instruction or asynchronously through free on-demand content to engage kids and families at home. Next slide. Also check out our Teach portal for free webinars, professional development, and educator curriculum training. Next slide. Additionally, we have a YouTube channel full of healthy snack making and instructional videos that share nutrition education and various culinary skills. Next slide. Subscribe to our newsletter to get great resources like activities for kids, recipe videos, reading lists, and workbooks with healthy recipes. Next slide. And last but not least, be sure to follow us on social media. Next slide. Thank you so much. If you have any questions and want to learn more about our programs or food philosophy, please do not hesitate to contact myself or Michelle. Thanks again.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Sarah Eichberger, and I provide leadership in the area of policy systems and environmental change with Michigan State University Extension, SNAP-Ed. I am joined today by my colleague and evaluation specialist, Dawn Ernesty. Today, we will present some of the findings of research that aim to assess SNAP-Ed community nutrition instructor and supervising educator confidence in administering the racial equity impact analysis tool to the policy system environmental change process with community partners. And I want to acknowledge that the work that we're sharing today was led by our former colleague and SNAP-Ed community nutrition instructor, Allison Rogers, who completed this ESSER MPH capstone in 2021 to 2022. Dawn and I both worked with Allie throughout the project. Also, this work received IRB approval from Michigan State University. And hand it over to Dawn. Next slide.
Thanks, Sarah. So the methodology really informed two research questions. The first question was, what are the needs of the SNAP-Ed community nutrition instructor and supervising educators to be more confident in using the racial equity impact analysis tool? And question number two, what are the barriers and facilitators to using the racial equity impact analysis tool for PSE change? Based on these two questions, 47 community nutrition instructors and 8 supervising educators participated in a 9-question Qualtrics survey and a 45-minute virtual focus group between October 2021 and April 2022. Focus group participants were shown the racial equity impact analysis tool, while questions were asked both verbally and in written form via the Zoom chat feature. During the focus groups, participants were asked a total of 8 questions with additional probes to facilitate dialogue and conversation. Facilitators of focus groups also provided definitions for the word equity as well as disparity. Survey results were analyzed into descriptive statistics, and focus groups were double-coded following Brown and Clark's 6 steps of thematic analysis. So this project aimed to identify the barriers and facilitators for using the racial equity impact analysis when coaching for PSE change. Staff and partner burden was the most mentioned barrier within the focus groups. While the racial equity impact analysis tool only has 5 questions, it is additional paperwork that must be completed in addition to the PSE assessments. The Racial Equity Impact Analysis tool was created by the Annie E. Casey Foundation and is comprised of 5 questions that assess the impact of a policy, a program, or an intervention on racial equity. Hesitation around having a discussion on racial equity was another barrier. Staff shared that whether it was their own hesitancy or the partners, that it was a challenge for them. Many staff mentioned that taking the first step or having the first conversation can be the hardest. Additionally, staff of color felt an extra burden in that they were putting PSE champions on the spot. Other barrier themes that emerged from the data included this being a new tool and comfort is always low with something new, and in addition to implementation directly after COVID-19. Many staff shared they had forgotten about the tool and that they were the trainings that were provided in October 2021, and we're really trying to rebuild relationships with partners that have been lost during COVID-19.
Thanks. So when it comes to facilitators, or what would make this tool easier for use, key facilitators included further training and learning opportunities and insight into training structure or a format that would be of most interest to staff. So opportunities for role playing, introducing, and going through the 5 questions in the tool was frequently identified as a way to gain practice and confidence. Training and learning aimed to build a greater understanding of the purpose or the what and why for using the tool was also frequently expressed. Additional top facilitators, including staff acknowledging their own self-knowledge and awareness of diversity, equity, and inclusion learning, and having strong relationships with community partners for multiple years was also noted among the top facilitators for use. Next slide. So the results are helpful in better understanding factors that facilitate and hinder use of the racial equity impact analysis tool. So there are opportunities to further enhance the internal capacity of our staff so they feel confident, knowledgeable, and supported, facilitating or co-facilitating the guiding questions offered with partners, creating opportunities for staff to further build a shared language and understanding of racial equity, disparities, and structural racism, can support knowledge of how racism is a barrier for achieving health equity. Developing communication tools or talking points staff can try on for use, or tailor can assist with context and clarity as to the purpose for its use. Future training and learning should take into consideration staff preferences that aim to build confidence by spending time with the questions offered through practice or using scenario-based learning or role-playing among peers and or facilitated dialogue among their small and trusted regional SNAP-Ed teams. Additionally, there are opportunities to incorporate principles and skill building on a spectrum of community-led approaches that aim to shift power to community. Further, there is room to consider how training and learning, such as these areas, align with our respective organizations' goals and values. And lastly, there are opportunities to integrate racial equity processes into our current assessment tools to reduce burden. And one of the limitations to point out that Dawn perhaps already had mentioned earlier was around timing of the focus groups and the survey, and that only a handful of staff had direct experience using the racial equity impact analysis. And we believe that to be the case because of the impact the pandemic had at the time on building and maintaining the level of community relationships needed to support PSC change adoption. So through SNAP-Ed, we can advance racial equity through supporting the implementation of PSC change. However, in doing so, it's critical we not perpetuate racial inequities and disparities. The use and completion of a racial equity tool or assessment allows the tool facilitators or SNAP-Ed staff and or their community partners to better understand how potential changes, whether it's food pantry operating hours, establishing a new food retail location, or making healthy, safe, and water more accessible, will affect either help or hurt racial disparities in a community. We know that PSC changes are stronger by centering and incorporating racial equity considerations from the beginning. And lastly, if you have any questions, next slide, we welcome your dialogue, and Dawn and I can be reached both at our email addresses shown here. Thank you.
You did. Hello, thank you for joining us and having us here to talk a little bit about our Washington State SNAP-Ed curriculum training and website team rubric project centering equity in direct education curriculum selection. So next slide. I'll say really quickly too. I'm joined here today by my colleagues Eileen Grigsby from our CTW team, Adrian Marquith from Leah's Pantry, and unfortunately, Courtney Shoup, also an author on this, was not able to join us today. So the background for this project, in 2021, the Washington State SNAP-Ed leadership team embarked on a journey to develop a plan for framing SNAP-Ed with an anti-racist and equity lens. Through a facilitated process, the equity and anti-racism strategic plan was, oh, sorry, next slide. Was going forward. Nope, sorry, I'm so off. I truly apologize. Go back one, and I'm really sorry. I was looking at my slides. So through a facilitated process, the equity and anti-racism strategic plan was developed, and this 5-year plan established pillars of influence along with outcomes and activities for each one of them. One particular activity, which was develop criteria for direct education curricula selection process to ensure alignment with indicators by federal fiscal year 2024, was assigned to our team, the curriculum training and website team. With this in mind, we set out to accomplish our goal. Now, next slide. So our first task was to look at what we were currently using to assess curricula for approval on the Washington State SNAP-Ed approved curriculum list. This is a snapshot of our original rubric. While there are some assessment of the curricula that focused on language, adaptability, cultural diversity, and learner-centered approaches, most of the rubric focused on compliance with SNAP-Ed guidance. While it is imperative that direct education follows guidance, we recognized that there were considerable opportunities to assess curricula from the perspective of the participant and the experience they would have participating in the nutrition education that we're receiving. I'll hand it over to Eileen.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So our formative evaluation process began in early 2022 with a literature review, which was conducted by an intern with our program. Themes from this review included choosing equitable curricula, best practices in nutrition education, and a learner-centered approach. Next, we contracted with Leah's Pantry to incorporate trauma-informed, equity-centered principles. In partnership with Leah's Pantry, we held focus groups across the state of Washington to gather information from SNAP-eligible community members and their families. We also held key informant interviews with SNAP-Ed implementers and educators to hear their perspectives around direct education, as well as how it supports policy, systems, and environmental approach work. We worked with the Washington SNAP-Ed Planning Action Committee to share results and gather feedback in order to ensure that the work on this rubric aligned with Washington SNAP-Ed goals and objectives. Next, I will pass this over to Adrian. Next slide, please.
During our discovery phase, we collected data that informed both the content and the usability of the rubric. In order to ensure accessibility to people throughout the Washington SNAP-Ed ecosystem, we created a version for CTW and a version for the implementers. Next slide. The CTW version included all developed sections. So the focus content and the physical activity sections are best scored by professionals who understand best practices in curriculum design and are trained to recognize accurate and up-to-date content. These sections are also less likely to see variation across implementers and have more in common with the traditional curriculum rubrics. For this reason, we determined that the CTW team was best positioned to complete these sections, and there was not a lot of added value to having implementers repeat this work. Next section. Or next slide, yeah. So we built the rubric expecting to see some variation in the ecological, instructional design, and benefits to facilitator sections. This is where the implementers play a crucial role in evaluating how curricula align with equity principles such as diversity, inclusion, and belonging, and in particular, whether the way the curricula interacts with their unique communities and educators. So an activity that lands well with one group may feel misaligned with another, and that is exactly the feedback that can be helpful to local implementers when they're looking for new curricula. Further, locals are encouraged to reflect on potential connections to multi-level interventions. For example, does the curriculum provide an on-ramp for participants to become more involved in local food access or community health conversations? And last, there is space for implementers to document both recommended or enacted modifications. Next slide.
So another aspect of assessing curricula that we had not previously considered was how this direct education connects to PSE approaches. Formative evaluation with key stakeholders revealed that this was a priority for the implementing agencies. In addition, our team provides training across the state and recognized that reaching participants through multi-level approaches has been a challenge. In order to help implementers consider broader opportunities, we included this section of the rubric. In this space, educators are asked to consider how the curricula being assessed might first be an on-ramp for participants to become involved in local food access and other health efforts that reach their communities. Second, help build relationships that support PSE efforts. And third, be an appropriate component of multi-level intervention strategy in settings that they're working in. So helping educators see the connection between direct education and multi-level PSE approaches is a key part of meeting the goals in our state. And this was the section that helps us support that. Next slide.
The Explainer Supplement document is included in the rubric to provide more information to SNAP-Ed implementers about using the rubric and why and how certain information was incorporated. It works to do three things. First, identify key features or indicators of the ecological section of the rubric. Two, it signals what to look for when using the rubric features to evaluate curricula. And three, to explain why these features are included in the rubric using the themes collected from the focus groups and key informant interviews conducted during our formative evaluation process. Next slide, please. Our implementation plan moving forward works to provide dialogue between SNAP-Ed implementers and the CTW team about curricula being used in the state. We've created a web location for local implementers to share completed rubrics with the CTW team and other educators. We encourage sharing allowable modifications made to their curricula and how it helped with implementation. We also encourage educators to put curricula through the rubric again after implementation to see if their thoughts and views have changed. Lastly, the CTW team is working to evaluate all current curricula used in Washington State. Our goal is to have constantly growing, changing, and evolving programming that adapts to the needs of participants and communities. Next slide, please. Thank you all for your time, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We have provided our contact information here on the slide, and I will also add it to the chat as well.
All right, hello everyone. I'm Nick Youngener. I am here with Carrie Draper, and we're with the University of South Carolina SNAP-Ed Implementing Agency. Thanks for joining our talk, where we will be exploring the dimensions of an equitable food access framework to a produce box program. That program is Food Share South Carolina. It is a produce box program that accepts SNAP and also our state's Healthy Incentive Program. It started initially in the capital city of South Carolina, Columbia, but has since expanded to be present in 19 counties across the state. Oh, next slide, excuse me, sorry. There we go. It has now expanded to be in 19 counties across our state. And some of the expansion work was done as part of an ongoing SNAP-Ed PSE implementation project. And so these boxes are, anyone can purchase the boxes. If you use SNAP via access through the Healthy Bucks program, the boxes are sold at a discount for SNAP participants. Next slide, please. If you'd like to learn more about the Food Share program, it was added as an emerging evidence-based intervention in the SNAP-Ed toolkit. So we encourage you to check out the intervention there if you would like to learn more about it. And Carrie has put into the chat the link to that toolkit. Yes, thank you. Next slide. So the aims in this study were to explore dimensions of equitable food access in the Food Share program using a model called the multi-component model of nutritious food access. The model aims to provide guidance to practitioners as programs are being developed to most effectively increase access to healthy foods in communities. Next slide, please. So we recruited participants for this study from a longitudinal outcome evaluation of the Food Share South Carolina program. And we recruited people based on their SNAP and food security status derived from that longitudinal study. So we wound up interviewing 12 people who agreed to participate in an in-depth interview that was conducted over the phone. And our interview guide was based on that multi-component model of nutritious food access. You can see on the right here, there are 5 main domains to that model with some dimensions for each domain in the bullet point breakouts there. And so we organized our interview guide to investigate, explore perspectives of people, of Food Share South Carolina customers in the domains of economic, service delivery, spatial temporal, social, and personal domains. And so next slide, please. And so our results, we did some organizational coding using those domains and then did emergent coding within each of those domains while also looking for any kind of emergent themes that came out across the entire transcript. So I'll go through each of these domains in turn here. On the right, I have some representative quotes, but the themes are on the left there. So if we look first at economic access, some main themes that came out were around price. So most people talked about price being a motivator to participating in the program. A lot of people talked about it being less expensive compared to other outlets. Some people, though, talked about stopping getting the boxes due to a lack of affordability. And a lot of times that affordability was related to an ending or a loss of their SNAP benefits. And so the boxes became unaffordable. And so there were some mixed opinions about the idea of changing the price on the boxes. So like, for example, this quote on the right here kind of illustrates this a bit of some people thinking that the price of the box was fair. However, they just didn't feel it was affordable for them. And some folks saw an additional value of getting the boxes. Next slide, please. So service delivery, a lot of people talked about the pickup process, how they got their boxes. Overall, there were positive experiences with staff with a few caveats. A couple of people mentioned some specific interactions with specific staff members that were less than positive, but overall there were positive experiences with Food Share staff from the participants' perspectives. A lot of people talked about the quality and variety as strengths for the program, as well as an area for an improvement. And kind of thinking about the pickup process again, this quote on the right up top especially talks about thinking about the pickup process as being difficult just based on something like a work schedule for this participant. So, having to negotiate pickup times that are kind of predetermined at a certain site or a certain location in conjunction with their existing work schedule, especially with a work schedule that may change, day to day or week to week. Lastly, in the produce boxes, there are recipe cards that accompany all the produce, and those recipe cards typically feature some item that's in the box and some recipes you could make. And overwhelmingly, I should say, people talked about recipe cards being useful and a welcome addition to just having the produce. Okay, next slide. All right, spatial temporal access. So related to locations of where people can pick up their boxes. There were some mixed thoughts here. So depending on, a lot of people talked about the location, the pickup location being close to where they work or close to their home. However, a lot of people did talk about some location challenges as well, depending. So, for example, the person on the right here talked about a hurdle for them being picking up the box and then having to do subsequent stops to take care of errands and taking care of kids and things, and the box kind of sitting in the car all day. And for this particular person, they one time had access to a fridge while they were out, and they wound up forgetting the box in the fridge. Some people did provide recommendations, though, for reducing or eliminating certain pickup challenges. For example, offering delivery or having more site options. One person, for example, mentioned adding more churches as locations in their rural setting, which is fairly common across South Carolina. Churches may be one of the more convenient locations that people can get to. It certainly was for this participant here. All right, next slide, please. All right, social access. So most people found out about the Produce Box program through their existing social networks, like a friend or some family. Some people talked about the boxes as being a great way to engage and share and trade with people. So in particular, people would say things like, I don't like squash, but my neighbor does, so we trade, and I take her tomatoes and I give her my squash, for example. So trading and sharing being seen as kind of a social benefit of the program. Building on that, people also talked about participating in the program in and of itself as a social act and supporting community. And so the idea of buying produce boxes and food share, they saw as a way to support community, which is quite interesting. All right, next slide. Personal factors. So in this domain, people talked about health as a motivator to participating in the program. For example, this person on the quote on the top right, the person is diabetic, and so knowing that they should eat fresh fruits and vegetables as part of a healthy diet, they decided to participate in the food share program. Other people talked about the program aligning with their existing food and eating preferences. This came up several times, and this one example here talks about or shows a person who is a fan of nectarines, in the box and containing those, being some of her favorite fruits, and so it aligned very well with her existing preferences. Okay, next slide. So overall, we saw that customers were drawn to food share due to the affordable cost. However, when they were no longer participating in SNAP or their finances otherwise changed, that the boxes for some people were seen as being unaffordable. Overall, staff and volunteer experiences with participants were positive. Experiences with pickup locations, varied based on participant and the spatiotemporal environment in which they lived. Social aspects included finding out about the program from friends and family, but also the kind of social building aspect of the program with trading with friends, family, community, but also the act of purchasing the box is seen as a kind of a community participation or community building act. And then finally, personal health was a motivator for some people to purchase boxes because of the types of produce in the box. And then lastly, so ensuring food share encompasses all domains of this multi-component model. From the perspective of program participants, we feel it's critical to ensuring equitable and sustained access. And so we recommend using this model to explore alignment with other SNAP-Ed food access interventions. And ideally, you could use this model in the development of interventions. So from the beginning, there's consideration of these different domains in conducting intervention that is seeking to increase food access in an equitable way. Next slide, please. All right, so thank you very much. And here's our contact information if you have any follow-up or further questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon or good morning, depending where you're calling in from. My name is Megan Hall. I'm the Regional Program Director with Brighter Bites, based here in Austin, Texas.
And I'm Lisa Robertson. I'm the Grants Administrator at Brighter Bites, based in San Antonio, Texas.
And today we'll be talking with y'all about a few of our strategies for success since our founding in 2012, including collaborative partnerships, research and evaluation, and dissemination of program impact. Next slide, please.
So a little bit about Brighter Bites. We are a national nonprofit and behavior change organization on a mission to create communities of health through fresh food. We do this through a 3-part formula: produce distribution, nutrition education, and a fun food experience. Or we fill the plate, educate, and make it great. So starting with fill the plate, we distribute up to 20 pounds of produce to every family we serve 16 times throughout the school year, often sourcing donated produce. So we're bringing fresh produce to the kids and their families where they already are, which is in their schools. And then educate through a train the trainer model and using the coordinated approach to child health, or CATCH curriculum. Teachers in our partner schools implement at least 8 nutrition lessons throughout the school year. And finally, make it great. We conduct recipe demos and tastings throughout the school year, creating a fun food experience for everyone involved. So by combining all of these pillars, consistent access to fruits and vegetables with in-classroom education for children and fun, useful resources for parents to help them utilize the produce, we offer a model that improves eating behavior and reduces food insecurity. Next slide, please. Since we started in 2012, so in the past 10 years, Brighter Bites has provided over 50 million pounds of produce and over 150,000 nutrition education lessons taught to over 500,000 families who participated in the program throughout 10 cities across the country. I know that's a lot of numbers, but next we're going to explore some of these strategies that we've employed to have this impact. Next slide, please. So our first strategy for success is our collaborative partnerships. You can see here we have HEB, CATCH, United Healthcare, and of course, SNAP-Ed, just to name a few. We are thankful to have formed many partnerships where we create synergy as we work towards our shared goals. Next slide, please. And additionally, we work with food banks and many produce retailers, distributors, and growers who donate excess produce that may otherwise end up in a landfill. So we put this excess produce directly into the hands of families that need it, which creates a win-win partnership. And with that, I'll pass it off to Megan. Next slide, please.
Thank you. So one of those founding partners that you saw in one of the previous slides is UT Health, the University of Texas Health Sciences Center at Houston, who leads our research and evaluation, which is the second strategy we're here discussing with you all. And so Brighter Bites programming, of course, is research informed. We're constantly answering 2 questions on an ongoing basis throughout our process and outcome measurements, and that's: are we implementing as planned? Are we following the program model as we intend? And then does Brighter Bites actually change the behaviors and build demand for fresh produce in the communities that we serve? And so we answer these questions through collection of pre and post surveys of participants, which assesses families' eating behaviors. And then we also are tracking family participation in the produce distribution component. And lastly, of course, schools' CATCH implementation, our teachers implementing the CATCH lessons in the frequency and the duration that we intend to. And so with all of this data collection and assessment, you can see in this slide, our research and evaluation has shown that compared to children and families that did not receive or did not participate in Brighter Bites programming, those Brighter Bites participants do report or show eating more fruits and vegetables as snacks specifically, and then just eating more fruits and vegetables overall, a significant increase in the amount consumed. And then lastly, as shown here, kids are eating or consuming less added sugar in their diet. So some really incredible results that we've seen. Next slide, please. And then further, of course, we are always looking, well, do these changes last? And our research does show that positive changes in the eating behavior among Brighter Bites families are sustained long-term. And so getting to our final strategy here that we're discussing, dissemination, we disseminate the impact of our program through published research articles, of course, as you've seen cited here in these last couple of slides. But then we also track our data and visualize our data, we have systems installed that allow for almost real-time observation of our program impact. And so that allows our programming teams to see these dashboards and see how many families are checking in, what's the participation like. And we have these dashboards available to our teams, and they review them on a regular basis, which enables them to identify low-performing schools and then employ best practices to drive program improvement. So both disseminating to the general public, then internally to our staff to improve our program. Next slide, please. So of course, we want to end with a few fun pictures of kids with the produce, one of the brightest parts of our programming, and just share, today we discussed a few of the strategies of Brighter Bites success over the last 10 years. We established mutual goals in collaborative partnerships to create synergy. We conduct process and impact research and evaluation that shows the impact of our program and shows that it works. And then, of course, we disseminate that program impact both internally to drive improvements, as well as externally to further advance scientific literature on effective behavior change. And so to wrap us up here, you can learn more by visiting brighterbites.org, and I'll also add my email to the chat for anyone interested in connecting. And I also see, Teresa, you shared the SNAP toolkit as well. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Colleen Fuller, the research assistant at the University of New England, which is the implementing agency for Maine SNAP-Ed. Today, I'll be briefly describing the process that Maine SNAP-Ed used to perform an equity audit of a cookbook that is used as part of our 10 Tips for Adults curriculum, which is on the SNAP-Ed toolkit. Next slide, please. SNAP-Ed has been working on an equity and trauma-informed lens, and in Maine, our story includes exposure to Leah's Pantry trauma-informed curricula, trauma-informed trainings by experts in Maine, and several presentations on adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. We're developing a collective knowledge, and the educators are fundamental in this culture shift. They're the ones who have been engaged in the trauma-informed trainings in Maine, and they're the ones applying the ACEs knowledge to their work in the classrooms and communities. So the UNE internal evaluation team are always looking for resources that promote ethical and respectful evaluation and dissemination practices. One way we do this is through our involvement in ASNA committees that are sharing practical examples and resources. Next slide, please. So the UNE internal evaluation team developed an audit form and a collaborative process for outward-facing participant resources using the language of health, an editorial style guide to effectively communicate to the public. This is by Corey Lortz out of Arizona. And the guide focuses on trauma-informed and asset-based messaging to build trust and collaboration with audiences. The style guide has 6 categories, including guiding principles, weight and body size, disordered eating and diet culture. And our audit tool includes those 6 categories, as well as additional categories for person-first language, cultural appropriation, and overemphasis of limited resources. The Lortz guide was shared at an ASNA evaluation committee meeting, and I believe Rhode Island and West Virginia have also used this guide for communication, social media, etc. And the 10 Tips for Adults cookbook is one of our most widely disseminated materials. And there was a discussion in our team that the cookbook needed to be updated anyway for a number of reasons, primarily the updated dietary guidelines for Americans. So it seemed like an opportunity to consider this public-facing document because how we communicate is critical, and we want to do a better job with our dissemination. So the evaluation team developed a methodology that would be transparent and grounded in a process that was replicable. And the audit tool allows discussion of changes, and the process felt evaluative. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, there were 6 categories from the Lortz guide. We also had 2 additional a priori categories that we knew would be an issue because it's a cookbook. And so those categories were on one tab on the Excel file, which I'll show in a minute. And then on another tab, we also had 3 emerging categories. And the emerging is where people were given a place to say, I'm seeing this overemphasis and trend, and I want to correct it. So if we were to do the process again, we would add all the categories from the beginning and not have them on a separate tab. And our process was we had 5 reviewers, one of which was a nutrition educator, because educators are teaching these recipes and they're distributing the cookbook as nutrition education reinforcement items. So they're our driving force for this work. And we felt we needed to have an educator at the table. So the cookbook has a text-heavy section at the beginning that has 10 tips, and then it has all the recipes, and each recipe has a corresponding tip page. So all of the reviewers reviewed the text-heavy section at the beginning, and then we divvied up the recipes in the corresponding tips pages. So each reviewer then reviewed those recipes on their own. We aggregated everybody's notes into one Excel file, and then we met as a group to reconcile all of our notes. Next slide, please. This is kind of a busy slide, but in the bottom left-hand corner, you see the categories. So the ones in pink are the 6 from the Lortz Guide, and then the cultural appropriation, and the ones at the bottom are a priori ones. And then the section at the top, you can actually see what our tracking tool looked like, our audit tool looked like. So for instance, the cookbook title, Eating Better on a Budget, this was actually flagged as under the disordered eating and diet culture category from the Lortz Guide. And we ended up revising the title to Eating Healthy on a Budget, because we felt eating better on a budget kind of went against the idea of all foods fit, and it made it seem like some foods are bad or worse. We had a tip within one of our 10 tips that said, don't shop when you're hungry. This was flagged under the guiding principles category, not only for dictating to the reader and not collaborating, but also for not meeting people where they are in terms of what's realistic for their lifestyle. So as you can see, we made over 70 edits in a 48-page cookbook. Next slide, please. And there's a few more examples here. So we had a sentence, this recipe can help you satisfy your sweet tooth in a healthy way. This was coded under the nutrition and food category from the Lortz Guide. The rationale was all foods fit and sweet tooth disempowered the reader. So we ended up deleting this sentence. Another sentence had a phrase, keep you feeling full longer. This was coded under disordered eating and diet culture. The rationale was we thought this focused on weight loss and that we should shift to nourishment or weight neutral health messaging. So again, we deleted that phrase. We had another sentence, use smaller plates at meals to help you with portion control. This was coded under the disordered eating, diet culture, weight and body size, and guiding principles. The message wasn't collaborative. It indicated that weight could be controlled by restrictive eating. It discouraged honoring one's hunger. It contradicted health is weight neutral. So we ended up rewriting the sentence to choose portions that respect your hunger and make you feel satisfied. Aim to make half your plate fruits and vegetables that you enjoy. So these are just some of the examples of the changes we made. Next slide, please. So what did we learn and what's next? This is a replicable process. It could be applied to a number of materials, and a structured process like this gave us a common language while still providing a method for discussion. The process was individually instructive as well as instructive as a group. And where do we go from here? So we've discussed using this process for other resources and materials, such as the book list that we have. So it's a list of books that are approved for use in our curricula. And going forward, we should keep these principles in mind when we're developing new materials. So many of our materials are tied to existing curricula that would be time intensive to revise. And realistically, overhauling an entire curriculum would be difficult. So we need to work with educators to prioritize similar reviews of existing materials. And in terms of lessons learned, reflect on what you've learned. We need to make changes to methodology that makes sense, and come up with a transparent process with community-based partners, such as our nutrition educators, that could prioritize next steps and determine how to further apply this methodology. And then the next slide is our contacts, which good luck getting all of these down. But if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me. I'm Colleen, and then I can shift your question to anyone else if needed. Thank you for your time.